And let's display.
Okay, Elena, if you want to go ahead and provide the instructions there for the Into to log in.
Sure. All right. Welcome to the July 2022 panel meeting. Attendees will be muted with the following exceptions. Presenters will be unmuted during their presentations. Contractor representatives will be unmuted during their proposal. And if they are called on by a panel member, sorry about my dog here. And public comment will be done throughout the meeting and when announcing by the acting chairperson at the appropriate times. For public comment, please use the raise hand feature to request to speak and wait until your name is called. The host will unmute you so that you can speak, and there will be a 3-minute limit per speaker. And that's my speech.
Okay, thank you, Elena. Appreciate that. So with that, I will pass it on to Desiree for the roll call.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Can you guys hear me?
Yes?
Okay, I will take roll call. Gloria Bell,
Present.
Chris Dombrowski, Madison Hall,
Present.
Ernesto Morales, Gretchen Newsom,
Present.
Araceli Campa Ramirez,
Present.
Janice Roberts,
Here.
Rick Smiles,
Here.
Doug Tracy.
Here.
Madam Chair, there are 7 members present. There is a quorum. Also present, Reg Javier, Executive Director, Peter Cooper, Assistant Director, and Michael Cable, Staff Attorney.
Thanks, Desiree.
You're welcome.
So did the panel member have a chance to look at today's agenda? There doesn't seem to be any changes to the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed say no. The ayes have it, motion carried. So did the panel members have a chance to look at the meeting minutes from the last panel meeting in June?
Yeah, motion to approve.
But before we have a motion, I'd like to open it up for public comment. Is there anybody in the audience that has a comment on the minutes from the last meeting?
There are no hands raised at this time.
Okay, so with that, do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve, Madam Chair.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second, Gloria.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Okay, very good. Thank you. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Reg Javier, our Executive Director.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, panel members, stakeholders, and staff. I'd like to also welcome the following managers who will be presenting the proposals to you later this morning: Kellen Hernandez, Ryan Swire, Chris Hoover, and Jana Lazarevich. Today, you'll see 22 proposals, which includes 5 delegation orders totaling around $5.7 million. Just have a couple updates. As you all are aware, given the fact that we're doing this panel meeting via Zoom, we do have the ability to hold our public meetings virtually. We actually found this out just after the last panel meeting. So our intent is to have one panel meeting a quarter in person, and then the rest of our panel meetings done virtually. Mike's going to give you a quick rundown on where the authority to hold virtual meetings came from during his report. A little bit about where we are with apprenticeship applications. As you know, we have been working towards redesigning our application processes. We started with the introduction of the online application in CalEForce. Then we went on to retooling the apprenticeship application process. And then we're going to work on the redesign of the first in, first out application process. And I'm going to circle back to that in just a second. Regarding the apprenticeship applications, we're moving all of them through the development process at this point, and it looks like we'll have them all coming to the September panel meeting, with possibly a few stragglers hitting the October meeting, but essentially we think that you're going to see them all in September. But with that said, it is likely that the majority of September's panel packet will be apprenticeship programs. You're going to hear more on this from both Peter and Mario during their updates. Now, going back to the first in, first out application process, as you will recall, last year we said that we would bring in a consultant to help us design a new application process that would essentially replace our current first in, first out model. Also at the time, I had asked for folks who were interested in participating in the work group for the redesign to let us know that they were interested. We got quite a number of volunteers, which included a few of you panel members. And just remember that we limited the number of panel members that were able to participate in this work group because we didn't want to run into quorum issues. So I wanted to let you all know that we've contracted with Civic Makers for this work. And Virginia Hamilton, who many of you may already know, will be the facilitator for the entire redesign process. So for those of you who volunteered to participate in the work group, we'll be reaching out to you very soon, so just hang tight. Jaime Gutierrez, who is not here today, will give a full update on timelines, what to expect, what we're envisioning for this series of meetings, and sort of the rundown on what's next. He'll do that update at the next panel meeting. And then lastly, we've been seeing a little bit of a slowdown in the flow of applications for funding this year. And just bear in mind that we're accustomed to being overwhelmed with applications at any given point in any fiscal year, to the degree that early on in the fiscal year, we're reporting to you all as a panel that we have way more applications than we have funding for the entire year. That's just not the case at this moment. And we're not saying that that's a good or bad thing. We're just noticing the trend. But in response to that, our EDU team has been expanding our outreach and marketing efforts to attract and bring in new applicants to ETP. And that's it for me, Madam Chair. Unless the panel has any specific questions for me, I'd like to hand it over to Peter for his report.
Thanks, Reg.
Okay, good morning, panel. It seems I'm having a little bit of technical difficulties. I cannot see anybody on the screen, but I understand that you can see me and hear me. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, great. Then I will just proceed with my report. So good morning. My report's going to focus on the apprenticeship funding. There's a lot going on in the state, including ETP. So I'll just dig right into it. The demand for our funding for this program greatly exceeded the available funds. After reviewing the applications submitted, we will be proposing a cap of $500,000 later this morning. Let me describe to you how we arrived at this proposed cap. We had nearly 70 applications with funding requests of nearly $30 million, much more than our allocation for apprenticeship, which is roughly $23 million for this year. So we did need to make some adjustments. The clearest way to stay within the allocation is to cap it at $500,000. We'll fund the numbers submitted after applying the $16 rate to the apprentices. Later this morning, you will hear Mario present this information again and ask for your action on this item. We believe that by distributing the apprenticeship allocation in this manner, we can serve all the applicants in a fair and clear way. As with the previous fiscal years, we will continue to stay within this allocation. Also, I'd like you to know that we have been auditing ourselves and making some corrections. We've discovered that we have been reimbursing certain things at incorrect rates, and we're correcting this mistake. The two examples I've got here is we've been reimbursing the veteran apprentices at the veteran rate of $26 an hour instead of the $18 an hour for apprenticeship, which is now coming down to 16. And then also, we need to adjust the apprenticeship rate down, as I said, to $16 per hour instead of 18. And this is to account for the increase in the RSI. We will be moving forward, working with the stakeholders to improve the apprenticeship program, and we're planning on presenting all the applications at the September panel meeting. We have been coordinating and working with DAS closely, ensuring that the numbers of trainees provided by the applicants and by the applications are reasonable. Just as we've relied on DAS for determining eligibility of a program into the apprenticeship program in the last year or so too, we're relying on them to look at these numbers with us. Regarding other state investments in apprenticeship, and these are significant, the state budget included unprecedented funding for earn and learn opportunities. This includes a significant investment in apprenticeship for both non-traditional and traditional. This is well beyond what ETP is doing, although we continue to play an important part. So for example, for this 2022-2023 budget year, the state's investing over $231 million in apprenticeship-related spending, and it's going to be $480 million over the next 3 years. New funding includes $175 million to create apprenticeship innovation funding for non-traditional programs, and this is going to be run through DAS, Division of Apprenticeship Standards, and we'll be discussing this and helping them as we can. $65 million will be to create a youth apprenticeship grant program, $15 million to fund a unit that works to advance women in construction. And lastly, there's also going to be an increase of over 30% in the reimbursement rate for training in building and construction apprenticeship programs. So all of these investments, these large multi-million-dollar investments that I just listed here, this is outside of ETP's control. We'll be helping our sister agencies as we can, but it's really just to give you an idea of the larger picture and the larger investment by the state in traditional and non-traditional over the next 3 years. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Tara for her update. Thank you.
So Peter, I have a question. I have a question, Peter?
Yeah,
Sure.
go ahead, Gloria.
Thank you. I just want to make sure I heard this correct. So in regards to the veterans, we were reimbursing $26 instead of $18?
We were apprentices that were also veterans were being reimbursed at $26 an hour. We do have a veterans pilot program. However, after further review of our apprenticeship program and staying within our legal boundaries, we made the decision with legal advice that we only invest them at the rate that is in the apprenticeship program. And largely this is because the way the apprenticeship program is set up, we can't duplicate funds that they're receiving. So that's, originally when legal counsel Maureen set this up, it was to reduce it by the RSI amount. So the RSI that they're getting went up. So our dollars went down. Mike, I know you're on the line as well. I don't know.
Quick question. I got that. Thank you. That's
Okay.
what we audit functions correctly. But what would be the effective date for the stakeholders to be, getting the correct rate?
The effective date would be any new apprenticeship programs coming to the panel. So the ones that you'll see in September.
Thank you.
Sure.
So Peter, I also have a question. So the $23 million that ETP is providing the apprenticeship programs is on top of all these other multi-million-dollar projects, funding that the apprenticeships will have. But of the 23 million, will we also see any new apprenticeship programs in that bunch that is coming in September? And will we see any more that are youth-oriented or women-oriented apprenticeship programs that also there's additional funding for?
You will see a handful of new apprenticeship programs. I know Willie Atkinson from our staff has the details on those, but mostly they are repeats coming in September. I saw 3 that were non-repeats and non-construction that we'll probably bring to you later in the year because they're a little bit more complicated. And so what you'll see at the September panel will be the preponderance, almost all of the apprenticeship programs, except for ones that are there might be some that are non-traditional apprenticeship that will come a little bit later.
I see. Okay. So what we're going to see is in September, we're going to see most of the ones that we've seen over the last 10 years or so. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I was just a little disappointed. I really wanted to see more new apprentices programs, and I understand there's probably going to be some new ones under some other, under other programs, which is great. But I just had hoped that we would also see some under ETP. But those non-traditional ones, as you mentioned, the newer ones may be coming later. Okay, very good. Thank you. Thank you for that. Okay, any other questions for Peter regarding the apprenticeship programs?
Just wanted to follow up on that, but for the repeat apprenticeship programs coming in, it'll be important for us to see that they're taking on additional cohorts, new cohorts of apprentices, and how they're doing their outreach to disadvantaged communities and women and people of color as much as possible.
Okay, that's great. Any other panel members have any comments regarding this? All right, so with that, I'll pass it on to Tara.
Good morning. Thank you very much. So I got a quick update for you guys on our CaliForce system and our IT group. So standard support going under CaliForce, but I wanted to point out under our Cali program, we've added 2 additional questions to the application for union. This eliminates the back and forth. When we receive the application, we don't have to go back to the customer, so it does streamline it. We also added in the NAICS industry codes and did the web lookup for NAICS industry. That was approved at the last panel, so those are updated. We have a new efficiency where we have an automated letter that goes out from the system once the panel approves. This does cut down on staff time and allows our customers to get their letter right away. And to come, we're also looking at an automation of areas within job number creation. This will help staff doing development, so more to come on that. Under our Cali Grants program, we're still supporting 7 grants with ETP and the state board, CWDB. We have released the application for breaking barriers and released the functionality for review and scoring for their prison to employment grant. And we're still working on the fund management part, which should be done shortly. And lastly, we're continuing our security enhancements for the audit and assessment coming up within ETP. And I tell you guys this, every month that we have a panel to let you know the efficiencies that we're adding to our program to help streamline areas. If there's any feedback or ideas out there, please don't hesitate to email our CaliForce command center at etp.califorce@etp.ca.gov. And that's all I have for you guys today.
Okay, thank you, Tara. The letter that goes out to after the approval from the panel, does that go both to the subcontractor and the contractor, or just to the contractor?
I believe it goes to both, and that's what we've asked for, to go to them both.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much, Tara. Any questions for Tara from the panel? All right, so with that, we'll pass it over to Michael Cable.
Good, my camera, there we are. Good morning, panel members. By now, all of you should receive this month's legislation memorandum. It was not in the panel packet this time, but rather it was emailed to you separately. And a copy will be posted on our website like we've done before for the public to have a copy. A few things to report today. First, the legislative calendar. Currently, the legislature's in summer recess and they are returning on August 1st. So now we're tracking the upcoming committee calendars to see what will be coming up in hearing and what we'll need to be monitoring. You'll also note that the legislation memorandum is a bit smaller this time as we removed various bills that did not get out of their respective House by the deadline of June 4th. Second, and kind of what Reg had pointed out, is a quick report about teleconference meetings or Zoom meetings as we do them. You may recall previous authority allowed us teleconference meeting that expired at the end of March. So we, of course, resumed the in-person meetings at that time. And we were tracking a couple of bills. There was AB 1733 and AB 1795 that were proposing amendments to Bagley-Keene, allowing for teleconference meetings. But both of those bills died in committee and they didn't go anywhere. Nonetheless, along came SB 189, which is a trailer budget bill. And it's actually the last bill on the last page of your legislation memorandum. And it was signed and chaptered on June 30th and became effective on June 30th. And in there's a section 20, which puts back into place a temporary measure, essentially allowing us to resume teleconference meetings via Zoom like we're doing, but only until July 1st of 2023, which we presume the issue of a permanent fix amending Bagley-Keene will come up in the next legislative session, which will be 2023, 2024. But in the meantime, with the help of SB 189, ETP has the authority, has the option to conduct teleconference meeting like we've been doing until July 1st, 2023. And as Reg pointed out, we've put together a schedule for having in-person meetings on a quarterly basis. Lastly, just a heads up that we're looking at having a couple of small group administrative training-like sessions with panel members and staff, primarily as a refresher to go over things like Bagley-Keene, Robert's Rules of Order, conflict of interest, general duties, those sorts of things. And I think we've had memos on those before. Quite frankly, it was brought up to our attention that some of the panel members were interested in such a refresher, kind of a housekeeping-like session. So the legal unit is now working on preparing a proposed agenda and written materials. And my expectation is that we'll be reaching out to each of you to discuss times and logistics in the near future. Those are the items I have for update, unless anyone has any questions.
So Mike, I saw that this SB 1351 was highlighted, the California Youth Apprenticeship Program. Is that what Peter covered, or is there something that was highlighted in our brochure?
Yeah, you'll see, actually, I think there was a couple of items that perhaps I was doing a couple of things when Peter was speaking, but I suspect that a couple of those items that he was referring to are included in the ledge memorandum, like the one you just described for apprenticeship training. There's other items in there too, because we've been tracking some of the more healthcare-like items. So you'll see funding in there to pay off debt for healthcare, student loan debt, et cetera. So there's a lot that's really coming out. So there's quite a bit in the ledge memorandum. I'd take a look at it.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mike. Does the panel have any questions for Mike? Hearing none, I'll pass it over to Mario.
Thank you.
Good morning and welcome, panel members and stakeholders. Thank you for the opportunity to provide you with a summary of the employment training panel's funding. My name is Mario Maslach. I'm ETP's Chief of Program Operations, and I'm delivering this report on behalf of Jaime Gutierrez, ETP's Chief Deputy Director, who is out of the office today. So as Director Javier stated, today's panel meeting is for $5.7 million. That includes 5 approved delegation orders for a total of $235,244. As a note, delegation orders are proposals capped at $75,000 and approved under delegated authority by a director on a continuous flow basis. If all the proposals scheduled for the panel meeting are funded today, the panel would be approving 22 projects. After today's panel meeting, the employment training panel will have approximately $87.3 million left in contracting capacity for the current 22-23 fiscal year. In regards to demand, as of the preparation of this report, we have 265 applications in queue, 84 of those applications are currently with regional offices in a development process. 64 applications are under review by the Application and Assessment Unit, and 117 submitted applications are pending review. The estimated value of those 265 applications is about 55.8 million, and it breaks down as follows. 23.6 million in demand for single employer contracts, 2.7 million in demand for multiple employer contracts, 10.2 million in demand for small business, $888,656 in demand for critical proposals, and as you heard from Peter, close to $30 million in demand for apprenticeships. Regarding these allocations, we are currently within all of them for the fiscal year 22-23, and considering this is our first panel of the fiscal year, that makes sense. Before I move to request the panel take action on the consent calendar, I would like to make a note, which was previously mentioned by Assistant Director Cooper. ETP has been conducting an internal audit or review of our legislation, regulations, and policy. As part of that process, we have changed how requests to shift funds between job numbers will be handled going forward. A notification went out earlier in the month to all of our stakeholders, informing them that starting August 1st, 2022, all requests to shift funds between job numbers will need to go through a formalized revision process. This is the final portion of my report, and I have one action item related to the consent calendar. At this time, I would request that panel members identify which proposals they would like to pull from today's consent calendar, if any, and then for a motion to approve the consent calendar with the exception and identity of those proposals being pulled. Those will be heard individually and in order. Please note that due to an error, tab 12, Advanced Composite Products and Technologies, Inc. was mistakenly left off of the consent calendar, and the motion should include tab 12 to be approved together with the rest of the consent calendar.
Okay, just let me take a minute to look at that. Right. Okay, so Mario, I want to make sure that people understand about moving funds from job number to job number, because some of my comments that are going to take place today is going to be regarding that. So I just want to make sure everybody understands starting August 1st that that's going to be very important on some of the comments that I may make. So with that, does the panel have any proposals out of the consent calendar that they'd like to hear separately?
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yeah, sure.
I don't want to pull this off of consent. I just want to state for the record that for tab 5, Clark, Rush, and Mechanical, I did ask a question of them because they had included a reference to a consultant occupation. So I had asked staff to ask the applicant, what is a consultant occupation? And they reported back that all of the funds received for that, or payments received for that, are filed on a W-2. There's no commissions. They also reported back that the combined the positions for a combined customer service and estimating position that works with customers to assess needs and match both programs and equipment to repair solutions and create a cost pricing quote. And that they're a regular employee and all wages are reported through EDD. So.
Okay, thanks, Gretchen, for the follow up on that, especially doing your due diligence with the staff. So any other comments from the panel regarding any proposals from the consent calendar that I'd like to pull in here separately? Okay, before I make a motion, I'd like to open it up for public comment. If there's any public comment on the consent calendar only, we can hear it at this time.
We do have one hand raised from Kim. It's been up for a while, so we'll ask if it's about the consent calendar. Kim, you should be able to unmute yourself. All right, it doesn't look like she is unmuting, so
Okay, well, maybe we'll capture that later, in the program. So with that, if we hear nothing from the public, I'd like to have a motion to approve.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. The ayes have it, motion carried. Thank you, Mario. So I will pass it back on to Mario to talk about another action item.
Thank you, Madam Chair and panel members. At this point, we'll switch to a presentation and a cap for apprenticeships. And I'll wait for the team to put that presentation up. Okay, and you can go to the next slide, please. All right, so as you know, in May, when we presented our caps and reimbursement rates and all of that, we deferred the decision for the apprenticeship cap for a future panel meeting. We're coming back now with that. You've heard Peter note that we're recommending a $500,000 cap on the apprenticeship projects. This is what things would look like as of now. It's only the apprenticeship projects that you would be voting for now. So with that, I request that the panel approve this change.
Okay, before we make a motion, does the panel have any questions regarding the project caps for the apprenticeship program project, since that's the only one that we hadn't made a motion on before? Before we make the motion, I will open it up for public comment. If there's anyone in the public that has a comment on these project caps for the apprenticeship programs.
There are no hands raised at this time.
Okay, so very good. So with that, I'd like to have a motion to approve the apprenticeship project caps.
So moved.
Second, Gloria.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. The ayes have it, motion carried. Thank you, Mario.
Thank you. And I also wanted to provide a little bit of clarification about Peter's notes on apprenticeship changes, specifically around veterans. Our reimbursement rate was $23 for veterans. Obviously, in our review of our policies, legislation, and regulations, we discovered that that does offset RSI funding. So that's why they're being brought down to $16 with the rest of the apprentices. We've also discovered that pre-apprentices were capped at $18, now $16, but they don't receive RSI funding. So that will go up to 23 because we're not displacing those.
Okay.
That is all I have, and thank you.
Okay, so Mario, just one other thing around, you said that this moving from job number to job number won't start till August the 1st.
That's correct.
So these that we see in our panel packet are good to go to be moving from project to project?
No, it's essentially for projects that that submit their closeout invoice or their request. It's
okay.
only for existing projects. It's usually, this is happening at the very tail end of agreements.
Yeah.
The projects that submit their invoices by essentially this Sunday will be grandfathered into the old process, and then from that point on, they'll have to go through the formalized revision process to request any shifting of funds.
Okay, I want to get clarification that said, wait a minute, we were already approved under this, I just wanted to make sure everybody understood that that's from past projects. All right, okay, very good. So with that, we'll pass it on to our review and action of proposals, and I guess we're going to tab 10.
Correct. Good morning, panel members. Tab 10 is for BR Building Resources Company. They are a first-time proposed contractor requesting $289,800 to train 170 retrainees and 40 job creation trainees located in San Diego County. Please note this is a set project, and the company is requesting the priority wage modification from $39.21 per hour to $29.41 per hour. Joining today is Jose Banos, CFO, Vanessa Banos, CCO, and Barry Menzel, consultant.
All right, thank you. Does the panel have any comments or questions regarding this proposal? Hearing none, I'll open it up to the public for public comment. If anyone from the public has any comments regarding this proposal.
There are no hands raised at this time.
Okay, very good. So with that, I'd like to make a motion to, I have a motion to approve, please.
Motion to approve, Gloria.
Second.
And a
Second,
second.
Gretchen.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. The ayes have it, motion carried. Thank you. Okay, we've got one has been withdrawn. And we're going, and the other one was on the consent calendar, so we're going to tab 13.
Good morning, panel members. Turn to tab 13. This is a training proposal for Headway Technologies, Inc. They are a repeat contractor and a priority industry. Total ETP funding being requested for $499,629. And that's to train an estimated number of trainees of 452 for job 1 retrainees, 145 under job number 2 job creation. ETP training will be delivered at the company's 5 locations in Milpitas. This is Headway's 6th ETP contract and its 3rd in the last 5 years. Although Headway does not have a formal veterans program in place for recruitment, the company does hire and employ veterans through its normal hiring practices. As I mentioned earlier, there is job creation. In this proposal, the company will hire the 145 new employees under that job number 2. And they'll train these new staff on recently purchased production equipment and software with that they've recently purchased, totaling an estimated value of $3.4 million. And they Headway added approximately 9,000 additional square feet of manufacturing space 2019 with an additional 40,000 square feet of clean room space, which is in progress to accommodate these new staff members. Here today to answer any of your questions via Zoom are Casey Matthews, Employee Relations Manager, Shelley Law, Production Training Supervisor, and Lisa Douglas from California Training Administration, CTA. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I have a question regarding this, and it's going to be kind of the same theme throughout the rest of these projects. Is around Productive Lab. And I mentioned this earlier about my concern around Productive Lab. And for those who don't know, I came from manufacturing and I'm very familiar with what Production Lab is about. But we don't see the granular detail around Production Lab in the 130. We see kind of an overview, which when I'm looking at the overview, it seems to me that up to 200 hours of Productive Lab training is a little extravagant. And, you know, if you do kind of the math in the back of the napkin math of 100 employees at 200 hours at $23 reimbursement, that's your entire project amount. So, you know, if I'm thinking to myself, well, you know, I would just train everyone that we have in Productive Lab and just move it within job numbers. And this is why I'm getting back to the job numbers, because in the past, this may have been acceptable, but it isn't any longer. So I want you to be sure that what you do in Productive Lab, it is done per job number and not overall. So, and I don't see that under the Productive Lab. So 200 hours of Productive Lab, I mean, you're only requesting an average of 75 weighted average hours or 24, but you're requesting 200 hours of Productive Lab. Now, here's the deal, is that a 1-to-3 ratio on new equipment is a little bit interesting, because if you're just sticking people out into the floor running new equipment on a 1-to-3 ratio, there's going to be a lot of mistakes. And so I don't know if you'd like to have that kind of waste in your business, but I certainly wouldn't if I was in manufacturing. So to me, I just want more explanation around what's going on with the Productive Lab and why you're requesting up to 200 hours of Production Lab. Is there somebody that can answer that question for me?
Yeah, this is Casey Matthews from Headway. Shelley Law, our production supervisor. Shelley, could you give some additional information on that?
Hi, my name is Shelley. I'm a training supervisor. So the Production Lab means the hours spent on the training in the lab, right?
No. So does anybody know what, I mean, you're requesting for Production Lab. That means that it's actually on the floor. So what are you thinking production lab is? You're actually making product for sale, or, you know, that's what production lab is about. So is there somebody that understands that with this company, or what's going on there?
This is Lisa. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, the production lab, Headway hires people that are not allowed to actually work independently on the equipment until they have had several, I mean, weeks and weeks of training on the equipment. But and actually it's mostly one-on-one. It's always been one-on-one. So we could always change that to one-on-one, Janice, if you would prefer that. And so the hours spent one-on-one with a supervisor trainer to teach each new trainee how to use the equipment goes for several weeks before they're allowed to be free and do their job independently. And Shelley, you can elaborate on that?
Yes, Lisa. So we are having new hire employees starting the company on a weekly basis, like 10 employees per week. And each employee required to get trained for between like 4 to 8 weeks until they start running the process independently. So the new hire employees work with the trainer, getting training and coaching on the new equipment and the process until they feel comfortable and start running the process independently. So then we have a certification process. When the new hire employee feel comfortable running the equipment, then they become certified in our Headway system. And that time frame takes, as I said, between 2 weeks to 8 weeks, depending on the tool's complexity level.
So the productive lab is only for the job creation folks and not for any of the retrainees. Is that correct?
We will probably have some new hires in the non-job creation group because they meet the wage, but there will be some in the job one that would have some productive lab. But most of them will be in the job 2 creation.
Okay, so, you know, Lisa, you know, you're the consultant on this. So this is what I'm getting at, and you can do the math as well. 200 hours times 100 employees times $23, that's $460,000, okay? Your contract is for $499,000. So I just don't feel comfortable about approving a contract with All Productive Lab now, because you're making money. I mean, it's not like, you're in a classroom and you're looking through books and you're, working on, prototypes of equipment before you're making product for sale. That's a different story. I mean, if you have, 100 hours of classroom training, which normally that's what I would be used to. I mean, we would go through 8 weeks of classroom training before they'd even touch a piece of machinery. But they're going to go right on the floor with somebody else. And it was 3 to 1, which to me would be a nightmare. People wouldn't even know how to push a button and turn on a piece of equipment. So I just am a little worried that this is too overwhelming for me to deal with. So is there, and you said you bring it down to one-on-one, but to me that still looks like there needs to be a whole bunch of classroom training before you do productive lab.
Hi, Janisa, this is Shelley. Yes, we do have a classroom training as well for the new hire trainee before we send them to the floor. So we have at least 8 to 10 hours of the orientations. So those are the classroom trainings, and we are also providing all the leadership and the coaching training for all the new hired employees in the lower management level, like production supervisors. And so we have the existing building, existing equipment. So we have the classroom training for that as well. In addition to the new hire employees for the new equipment.
Okay. Yeah, I understand 8 to 10 hours is orientation. It's not really learning the piece of equipment. And you know, you have to see where I'm coming from this. I mean, we're paying you $23 an hour for your production staff. They're making product for sale, so they're doing the regular work, you know. You have a trainer that's working with them, and the trainer, as far as I know, could actually be running another piece of equipment. I don't know. I don't know your setup. So that is a problem. Now, I can look at approving this, you know, because it seems like you have good wages, but I would want to reduce the amount of productive lab, and then I would feel a little more comfortable with that, because this is what would happen, is that you would spend 200 hours of production lab and you kind of move it within jobs. And that's what we said you couldn't do. In the past, it may have been acceptable, but now it won't be. So I could maybe bring it down to 75 hours of productive lab, even though that, to me, that's pretty high, up to 75 hours on the 1:1 ratio of trainers. You know, I can go for that, but not up to 200 hours. I mean, that's way too high for me. So I don't know how the other panel feels about it and what their recommendations are.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes.
I share these same concerns with you. The optics of it make it appear like they're almost making money off of this contract, and that it doesn't sit well with me either.
Yeah.
So 75 hours, that's roughly almost 2 full weeks of productive lab training. That seems a little bit high to me.
It does.
I was more comfortable at 50 hours of productive lab with the one-on-one training. It feels more like a full week and then some on these machines would be sufficient, and really placing much more of an emphasis on the other skills and trainings that they are supposed to be receiving, rather than the inverse of what's presented, where it's mostly productive lab versus the other. So I share your concerns. I'm more comfortable with 50 as the productive lab number with the one-on-one training, but see what everyone else has to say.
Okay, I'm gonna ask the
Yeah,
rest
this
of
is Gloria. This is Gloria, Madam Chairman.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with Gretchen. It just seems a little, and I agree with you as well. It just seems a little too excessive with the 200 hours, and I feel more comfortable with really shaving that down, because I come from manufacturing as well. I mean, not only is there a production issue, there's also a safety issue as well with any type of new equipment.
Yeah, you're correct. Rick, did you have something?
Yeah, I concur with what everybody's saying. I think that it should be right sized.
Okay, so here's the deal. When you say up to 200 hours, you could probably say, well, I was only going to do 50 hours anyway, but I'd like to get that in the program, because otherwise you could just say, well, they approved up to 200 hours and I'm going to do 200 hours because it's easier for me to do productive lab, because, you know, we get the same reimbursement rate and you know, we're making product for sale. So I mean, I'd like to bring it down, as Gretchen mentioned, to even 50 productive lab hours, up to 50. You may not need 50, but up to 50, and then a 1:1 training ratio on that. Now, if you look at some of our other contracts, a lot of them are other manufacturing companies, and they don't have any productive lab. They're not requesting any productive lab. And we've in the past have been very, I think, open to productive lab because of different situations that have risen over the last several years. And so I haven't really scrutinized it as much as I'm doing now. And you've probably been able to move, you know, the hours between job numbers. Now we can't. So I just want to make you successful. And I just think that, you know, bringing it down to 50 hours, up to 50 hours of productive lab is a better number. So, any other comments from the contractor regarding that?
I think that would work. We can work with that.
Okay, yeah, and the clarity on having them understand what productive lab is, Lisa, is a little concerning to me. You would think they would snap right into it, especially as a training supervisor, they would know exactly what productive lab. It has nothing to do with being in a lab at all. So it's just a title that we give, you know, kind of on the job training. It's used to be called on the job training. So, all right, okay. So with that, we're going to make a motion to approve this if there's not any other concerns. with up to 50 hours of productive lab with a 1-to-1 training ratio.
So
Is that-
moved.
Okay, so we
Second,
have a motion to
Gloria.
approve.
Second, Gloria.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed,
Aye.
say no. The ayes have it. Motion carried. Thank you.
Madam Chairman, I actually missed the first motion. Who was that again?
Gretchen, I think.
Gretchen? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, tab number.
Okay, panel members, please turn to tab 14. This is a training proposal for Ignamar Packing Company LLC. This is a priority industry and a repeat contractor. Total ETB funding being requested for $487,600. And that's to train an estimated number of trainees of 80 under job 1, retrainee within an HUA, high unemployment area, 235 under job number 2, seasonal retrainees, also in a HUA area. Training will be provided at the company's 2 locations in Los Banos. Although Ignamar does not have a formal veterans program in place for recruitment, the company does hire and employ veterans, although it is through their normal hiring practices. This will be Ignamar's 3rd ETB contract and its 2nd in the last 5 years. And here today to answer your questions are Benito Martinez, Human Resources Administrator, Maria Presido, excuse me for that pronunciation, and Human Resources Coordinator, and Lisa Douglas from CTA.
All right. So it's going to be the same story for me regarding Ignamar Packing as well. You know, they're coming through with a large amount of, up to 200 hours of productive lab. It's the same thing. I know it's the same contractor and they just probably threw that in there thinking, okay, this will be great. We'll get productive lab. But it's, to me, it's again, way too high for seasonal workers. And the seasonal workers are probably repeat workers that come back season to season. So I can't really justify that. I just, even though you may have some maybe new production equipment, but I would hope that companies are always trying to upgrade their production equipment anyway. But I would say it's the same thing. The 1-to-3 ratio probably won't do it for me. And up to 200 hours won't do it for me either. I mean, that's your total project. That's your 460,000 is your total project. So I would also like to reduce this one as well, down to down to a 50-hour, up to 50-hour productive lab plus the 1-to-1 ratio. So before we make an approval or anything, I'd like to pass it on to the rest of the panel regarding this.
I agree, Madam Chair.
Is there anything, again, with anything to do with any other problems or concerns regarding this proposal from any of the other panel members other than the productive lab issue?
I had a question about medical benefits for the 235 seasonal retrainees. The qualifying period and when they receive medical benefits.
My name is Benito from Ignamar Packing. Our seasonal employees do not receive medical benefits.
I can't hear you.
Hello, can you hear me?
No.
I believe he said that the seasonal workers do not receive medical benefits until unless they are converted into regular full-time employees.
So so of these 235 folks that you're asking for funds for training for state of California funds, they receive no medical benefits. Is that correct?
No medical benefits. They're seasonal, they only work 3 months out of the year.
They only work 3 months?
Yes, we're a tomato processing company. Our season.
Yeah, I know who you are. I'm familiar with your company. So I know who you are. So your folks, your seasonal folks only work 3 months out of the year, and you're going to be training them for those 3 months and receiving California funds at the same time, and yet they're not receiving any form of benefits.
Some seasonal benefit workers work year round, and once they work the whole year, they're qualified for medical benefits.
Well, let me ask you this. What's the probability of those 235 folks becoming full-time?
Out of maybe the 200, maybe 5 or 6 of them become full-time, depending.
Ugh. Wow.
Again, we're a seasonal company. Most of our during the season.
I know, yeah, it's just sad. It's just very sad that, somebody gives their life and time to a company and only receives a paycheck and not any form of benefits.
So that kind of opens up another can of worms for me here. Only because if they only work for 3 months of the year, what you're requesting is that everything that they do is productive lab. So that to me is a little bit of a problem. To me, it's like easy money is kind of a way that I would describe it for your seasonal employees. And you're making a profit on them. I mean, you're paying them a wage, but we're paying you probably more than they make, and they're doing so you're getting on top of whatever you're paying up 16, we're reducing it for 23, they're not getting any medical benefits, and yet you're making a profit on the wages as well as producing a product. So with that, I mean, not only do I want to look at your productive lab a little more, I also want to look at maybe right sizing the project. So I don't feel comfortable about
So do I, Madam Chairman. I'm totally uncomfortable with this application, and yeah, I don't even know about right sizing, truthfully, at the point right now, because we're talking about 235 folks. And I guess the 80 employees are full-time, is that correct? Full-time year-round with benefits?
Yeah.
Maybe, Madam Bell, like we only approve it for those 80 full-time employees until they can figure out in their industry how to apply medical coverage to the seasonal workers. There are other occurrences of how we can get that done. I mean, they can travel to other contractors and maintain their medical coverage. So I share your concern on this, and this doesn't feel right to approve.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with
I'd
you.
agree also.
Okay, so we have a lot of different things going on here. So before we go ahead and kind of skinny this down or right size it or whatever we want to do, can we get all of the details in place before we open it up for public comment? So we're looking at not funding the seasonal employees of 235 for 3 months. So with that, the productive lab would go away altogether, because that's who they're asking for the productive lab for. And the only amount that we would actually fund would be for the 80 retrainees in job 1 for 30 hours of weighted hours. Is that what I'm hearing?
Can I interject? This is Lisa again. We put in 235 seasonal workers. They actually have almost 500. We just stuck in the 200 because of the maximum amount. We could put in 500 and lower the productive lab and do the 1-to-1, but they do train them and they do come back every year. I don't know what to do about the health benefits. That's out of my realm, but they do have 500 seasonal workers, and right sizing it might be lowering the hours and noting that there's 500 seasonal workers.
Yeah, this is Gloria, and all that tells me is now you have 500 seasonal workers without benefits. So I don't know if that, that's the best scenario here.
And only about 5 actually possibly maintain full-time employment. I mean, that percentage seems to be dropping drastically as we increase the number of people that are working there.
Yeah.
I would feel uncomfortable approving anything at this point going forward right now.
And
Madam Chair.
I'm not understanding that there's seasonal workers that do get benefits. Is that a possible thing if they're not full-time employees or even employees at all?
Again, I think you need to go back to the drawing board and clarify and define what a full-time worker, if you don't know what that is, and a seasonal worker. But it sounds like you have 500 approximately employees right now who are seasonal that are not benefited. And I agree with Doug. I just feel really totally uncomfortable with this application as it stands right now.
Madam Chair, this is Mike Cable. It sounds like this one has quite quite a few more questions and things to still be determined, unlike the last one where you were able to make a modified motion. Maybe this one should be tabled and sent back to staff for further review to address some of these concerns, because there's quite a few more concerns on this particular proposal, unlike the one we had before.
Totally agree.
Okay, thank you, Mike. I just wanted to make sure that I had heard from all the panel members regarding, what their intention was. But I do agree that there is a lot of things that have to be worked out before, we make an approval one way or the other. So with that, Mike will just table this until a later date, have the staff and the company work on a different type of proposal, and then come back before us at a different time. Is that correct?
That's what I'm suggesting, but we would want to do that by motion. So
Sure.
if that's something the panel's inclined, then we would need a motion and a second to table this proposal for further consideration to bring back at a future date.
Okay.
Yes, and Madam Chair, we've taken note of all of the issues that the panel's raised. So we'll take those back. If there are any other issues of concern from the panel, please, after the panel meeting, send those our way, and we'll take those into consideration as we work with the applicant as well.
Okay, so with that, before we make a motion from the panel, I'd just like to open it up for public comment. If there's anyone from the public other than who we've already spoken to that would like to make a comment on this.
There are no hands raised at this moment.
Okay, so very good. So the motion is that we will table this project until a later date until they can get things figured out. So do I have a motion? Do I have, okay, I got Rick as a motion.
Second, Gloria.
And Gloria to table this. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, say no. The ayes have it. Motion carried. Thank you. Right.
Okay, panel, let's move on to tab 15 here. This is a training proposal for Vanderben Manufacturing, Inc. This is a priority industry and a repeat contractor. Total ETP funding being requested for $499,790. That's to train an estimated number of trainees of 195 under job 1 retraining, 358 under job 2 job creation retraining. ETP funded training will be delivered to employees at its San Jose, Santa Clara, Stockton, and Rancho Cordova facilities. This will be Vanderben's third ETP project and is third within the last 5 years. Even though Vanderben does not plan to include a separate veterans job number, the company actively seeks veteran recruitment organizations to attend meetings to recruit veterans. Due to Vanderben's business capacity growth, the company will hire 358 new employees under that job too. And here today to answer your questions are Matt Howell, training manager, and Greg Biggs, CEO.
Good morning. So you may have heard some of the comments on the past projects, and regarding your productive lab. Now, you are asking for up to 60 hours and a 1-to-2 ratio training. And when I looked at your productive lab training agenda, it looked like it is assembly, CNN machines, fabrication, welding, surface preparation, machine operation, and grinding. So how many employees are we talking about for those jobs? I didn't see that in here.
I'm sorry, could you repeat your question? Which specific jobs did you want to know the numbers for?
Well, no, so you're saying you have a total of 530 trainees that are going to be going through productive lab. Is that correct? Is that what I'm seeing here? It just seems like over.
No, ma'am. We generally use less than 60 productive lab hours. Our main focus, which we've used ETP contracts to develop for, is really getting people who can become quite expert at CNC machines. And so that 60 productive lab hours is mainly for once they've gotten up to the point where we think they are ready to operate a multi-million-dollar machine and potentially crash it. We need to really put it to the test and give them those productive lab hours to we have a lot of backstops in place to make sure that they're not going to crash the machine, but at some point in time we need to test whether that's accurate or not. And so those 60 productive lab hours, like I said, we generally, I'd say on your average, in our previous contract, it's probably like, I don't know, 20 to 30 tops for those people. But those are there just in case we need them, in case, you know, they do crash a machine or whatever, and which is much more serious. But
yeah. So so how many employees are actually going to be going through Productive Lab? Is it only the new employees? Is it some of the new employees? Because right now I'm looking at the paragraph here and it says 530 trainees. And so it seems like that's your entire workforce.
No, the ones who are in the CNC machinist and inspector training programs, they will definitely get some Productive Lab, because like I said, ultimately we have to put their feet to the fire, so to speak, and make sure that they can actually do the work. The other ones are the new hires. They generally will get 0 to maybe 5 Productive Lab hours tops, because the level of skill set we're talking about there is much lower, and they're able to master, you know, through classroom instruction and, you know, group-based instruction, what they need to do. And there's just not the need to really test their ability to operate the machine routinely and repetitively.
Okay, so if you look at, so it's just the CNC machinist, or is the machine operators as well? I mean, how many people are we talking about? Are we talking about everyone that you have, production staff? Because that's what it says, 530 trainees. That's what I'm seeing here, and that's your entire population. So I'm just trying to get to the right numbers, sir. That's all.
Sure. I don't see where it says specifically that we're doing 530 people with Productive Lab hours. If I do find that, I'm scrolling through the project details right now. We can correct that.
It says it in our paragraph. I mean, I don't see the granular detail around Productive Lab. All I see is kind of a summary of Productive Lab, and what it says is a total of 530 trainers working as CNC machinist, inspector, machine operator, and production staff when are faced with new or improved manufacturing process will attend PL training. That's what I'm reading here.
Okay, correct. Yes, I found the section you're reading. Yes, so those 530 trainees, sorry, the machinist, inspector, the first 2 job occupations listed are the most likely to get up near 60 hours, but I don't think they will. I think they'll probably top out at 30 max. The machine operator and production staff will, on average, stay within 0 to 5 Productive Lab hours.
Okay, and I'm sure this might be put in your proposal, you know, in your application. You know, we don't see all of the details, we just see kind of a summary, but yeah, and I also, is there a problem with doing more of a 1-on-1 trainee ratio versus 1-on-2? Like I said, I've done 1-on-2 before, and I was a trainer myself, running a piece of machinery. It seems like, you know, and then you take a break, and, you know, it just doesn't seem like a 1-to-2 works that well. So could we do it to a 1-to-1?
1-to-1 is perfectly fine with that.
Okay. All right. Okay, that's fine. If we can limit the 530 trainees, to me, that sounds like everybody's going to go through Productive Lab, and to me, that utilizes your whole contract, you know, 500,000. So that's the problem that I was thinking about. So, all right. So we've got. So what we're asking for is just a certain population of your employees to go through Productive Lab, but not 60 hours worth, and then you do a 1-to-1 trainee ratio. Okay, that's good. So with that, I'm going to ask the panel if they have any questions or any additions to what I mentioned around that. Okay, hearing none, I'm going to open it up to the public for any comment regarding this proposal.
There are no hands raised.
Okay, and before we make a motion, I just want to understand that Matt and Greg agree with what we just talked about, and that it will be put in the into their regular contract.
Yeah, hi, this is Greg. Good morning. yeah, first of all, I wanted to say I didn't raise my hand early enough, but I actually appreciate the scrutiny that I've witnessed so far this morning. You know, honestly, and I mean that because it's a fiscal responsibility kind of scenario. And I just appreciate it. What I will say is if I can steal 60 seconds, this is an incredibly meaningful project for us. We're on our third contract now, increasingly higher dollar value. And this is really assisting us in keeping our growing manufacturing company largely in California. There's a lot of pressure from a margin perspective to migrate out of California. Some of that has to do with employees, and obviously a lot of it has to do with what we pay employees. And this $500,000 essentially is going to be a fraction of what we spend on our training program. But it is a passion project to keep these people here and to take people off the street in a very expensive area to live and essentially train them into something where they have a career. So I'm really just saying thank you that this is I believe that we represent the intent of this program, and it's been very successful for us, and it's helpful in a lot of subtle ways that I won't waste any more of your time going into. But I think that I feel like we're trying to be the poster child for the success of the ETP program.
Well, thanks, Greg. I appreciate your comments, and I know you've been very successful in the past. But one of the things you mentioned around, maybe moving out of state, I hope you're looking at some of our other incentives in California with Cal Competes, whether it's the tax credits or whether it's the grant. So might be something you might want to look at as well. So.
Yeah, we are looking at some things, and I'm sure we're not looking at all of them just out of a bandwidth scenario, but I will challenge my team to look for more because it's definitely a pressure to move out of California to a certain level. But I think we best serve some of our larger med tech customers, especially that are in California, and we're trying to leverage everything we can. But we'll dig a little deeper and see if there's any other nuggets to be found out there.
No, California Competes. If you're paying taxes, state taxes, I mean, it's a great incentive program for California. And it sounds like, if you have, any kind of inkling about moving out of California, that's what it's all about. I mean, wanting to keep you here, and that's what Cal Competes does. So if you can put a great program together, maybe there could be some tax incentives for you there as well. If you don't pay taxes, there's also a cash grant that could be available. So.
Wonderful. We'll definitely explore that. I'm also joining the board of Nova Workplace, and hopefully try to be the best possible citizen here for employing people that are maybe you would say that are on the margin of employment. And so it's just this really helps that program, and I'm hoping to learn more by joining the board of this jobs program.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, if I may, Greg, also I'd love to connect you with Robert Meyer, our lead on our EDU team, our economic development team. He'll help you with identifying those other resources that might be available to you guys.
I would really appreciate that. We've kind of exhausted our avenues here with the city of San Jose. No, nothing denigrating to the city of San Jose, but we've gone as far as we can with what they offer. So I would be moving this to a state level, support, looking for support services would be a great jump for us.
Great.
Thank you all.
All right, so thank you. So any other comments from the panel regarding this proposal? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve?
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second, it's Gloria.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, say no. The ayes have it, motion carried. Thank you.
Aye.
Thank you again.
Okay, good morning, panel members. Next, we have tab 16. This is a proposal from Crane Walnut Shelling LP. They are a repeat contractor with good prior performance, requesting $226,550 to train a total of 187 workers, including 50 new employees. Training will take place at their facility in Tehama County. Here joining virtually from Crane Walnut Shelling to answer any questions are Jim Roji, General Manager, and Keith Brahma, Consultant, Propel Consulting Group.
Very good. Does the panel have any questions regarding this proposal? Okay, before we make a motion, I'm going to open up to the public. Does the public have any comments regarding this proposal?
There are no hands raised.
Okay, so very good. So do I have a motion to approve this proposal?
Motion to approve, Gloria.
Do I have a second?
Second, Rick.
So we have a second. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed say no. The ayes have it, motion carried. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I actually have a quick question, not about the matter you just had, but the matter before it, which I believe was Vander, perhaps?
Ben,
Correct. Was that a motion to approve as is with the proposal?
no,
panel.
we had talked about bringing down to a 1-to-1 ratio.
Could we just, because the motion itself was a motion to approve, I think there was some discussion there. Can we be clear and redo that motion and have the qualifications or whatever limitations in the motion itself?
Right, funny, Mike, I really didn't get a very clear picture on that. They did say they'd bring it down to a 1-to-1 and they would bring the amount of productive lab to only a certain classification of titles. I didn't get the full picture on that, so, but that
I
was.
did hear that they agreed to your limitations there, but what I was getting at is the motion itself was just a motion to approve and there was no qualifications or limitations. So I think the record's unclear.
Okay, so if we want to go back to tab 15, so the motion was that we would limit the training to training ratio on productive lab to 1-to-1, and that they would limit the amount of job titles to productive lab, not 530 trainees, but only a certain amount of trainees up to that. And they didn't say 60 hours. They said it would probably be less than that, but I didn't really get a clear picture on that either. So, so I don't know where to go with that at that point. So, so I don't know if anybody else heard a different story than I did. Please welcome to chime in. So.
Madam Chair, so as the maker of the motion, I guess it would be up to me to make the motion with the understanding that it would be a 1-to-1 ratio for the lab, production lab, and then that they would reduce it to 50 hours, or was that the appropriate amount of hours?
Well, actually, it was less than that. They said even up to 20 hours. So, but I didn't get a clear picture on that, Rick. So it's my fault. I didn't really get a clear picture on how many trainees, because they went through the machinist trainees and the machine operators, but it wasn't going to be the 530 trainees that was identified in the 130. So I don't know what the number was. So do we need to go back? Is Matt or Greg still on the call?
And I believe this was Chris Hoover's project. I don't know if he can help on this too.
Yeah, my understanding with productive lab, a lot of times we're not always allowed to limit like who goes into it. I mean, they're not going to just put somebody on a machine that doesn't belong there, right? I mean, that wouldn't benefit the company, but it's more of the range. It sounded like from what Matt was saying, 30 is the average, where there might be some instances where up to 60 is needed. And so that's where we don't have a cap on PL, and we usually try to work out with them, hey, what is like to the point where you meet competency, even though I don't even know if we have that technically in the regs. So we usually try to determine that. And a lot of times companies get confused, as you saw today, with what is actually productive lab when we always explain it to them. This is on the production floor with a product going to the market. And, we can say that ad nauseum, but it doesn't always sink through, or somebody shows up the panel that wasn't part of the site visit meeting, et cetera. So at this point, they asked for 60. It sounds like it's most likely not always going to be needed. Oh, and Matt's on here to answer some of the follow-up questions, but that's what I was hearing.
Okay.
Matt, it sounds like we should clarify, and apologies for not, I was trying to click in, but we moved to the next matter before I could click in fast enough. So, but it looks like we do have a representative perhaps where we can get clarification on this motion.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I left, and then my my boss had his, fortunately he had his Zoom still running, and was able to notify me that you're still discussing our contracts. But yes, we can reduce it to 40 hours for the CNC machinist and inspector trainees. And then if you want to remove the others, I don't know if you can set a cap for the different job titles, but if you'd like to, the other job titles should be, I think a 5-hour to 10-hour cap will be appropriate.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm not sure if there's really a way to do that. I mean, maybe we do that in our country. We've never done that in the past, though. It's just Productive Lab is a delivery method that's allowed across all job numbers, and it's per trainee. So
Yeah, and I don't have any problem with reducing it up to 40 hours with a one-to-one trainee, if that's how we want to deal with it. But again, Matt, just be careful of moving your jobs between retrainees and job creation, because this is where it might get a little sticky if you train too much in Productive Lab and then you've got a whole bunch of hours in Productive Lab, and then you say, wait a minute, I've got more hours than I need, I'm going to move it into job one. That can't be done any longer. So I just want to make sure you understand that the limitations are changing. So, but I agree with the up to 40 hours and one-to-one ratio. That clarifies things, not using job titles as an indicator.
That sounds good to me.
I'll make the
Okay.
motion, Madam Chair.
Okay. Thanks. So with that clarification for Matt, and I appreciate coming back on, Matt, to go through the one-to-one up to 40 hours. That's the difference that what we see in the 130. So, and we have a motion from Rick. Do we still have a second from Gloria?
Correct.
Okay, so we got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed, say no. The ayes have it. Motion carried. Sorry
Thank
about
you.
that. Sorry about
Thank you,
that,
Pam.
Mike.
No, thank you. I think it was a worthwhile clarification.
Okay, very good. Okay, tab number 17.
Yes, good morning, panel members. I'm here to present the proposal developed in the San Diego Regional Office. Tab number 17 is correct. National Veterans Transition Services, Inc., or National Veterans. This will be National Veterans' third ETP contract in the last 5 years. I do need to address a few corrections to the proposal. The support cost amount and total ETP funding on page 1, and the estimated number of trainees and average cost per trainee on page 2. The changes are the following. The support cost amount is $35,148. Total ETP funding is $255,258. The estimated number of trainees are 87, and the average cost per trainee is $2,934. National Veterans is based in San Diego, but works with participating employers statewide for trainee placement. National Veterans has developed a comprehensive military to civilian transition program named Reboot, which is designed to address the personal and social aspects of transitioning to civilian life. Here today representing National Veterans and ready to address questions from the panel is Maurice Wilson, President and Executive Director, and Bill Sachs, National Training Company. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the panel have any questions regarding this proposal?
Madam Chair, I do, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
If the applicant can please elaborate for me on what production staff is under job number 1.
Madam, we're not engaging in, good morning, first of all, panel members, Maurice Wilson here. We're not engaged in productive lab training in this project.
Okay. So what does that position entail? Production staff, what would they be doing?
Production staff would be our facilitators, our educators, helping the individual with sort of like a not just a job reconstruction, but a life reconstruction as well. As you know, leaving the military and joining the civilian community requires sort of like a rechanging and rethinking. And what the team does is helps the individual work through that process.
What was my other question pertaining to this one? Could you elaborate for me on how you're placing the veterans in your program? Because they're new hires. You're providing a program for them to transition to civilian life, and then you're placing them with an employer after you provided some training to them. So how are you identifying the employers, and what does that look like?
It looks good. We work with hundreds of different employers. They're contacting and reaching out to us pretty much every day, seeking veterans. As you know, there's a high demand for veterans given the work ethic, et cetera. And so we're working with so many different employers that are really looking to get them into the workplace. So not a problem with employers at all. The challenge is just, can we meet the demand and get as many veterans into the workplace as possible? To do that, we're actually working across the state with multiple what we call veteran network organizations from Los Angeles to San Diego to Riverside to Sacramento. And so we have a pretty vast network of multiple sources. I think the total number of organizations that are working with us to identify cohorts and send them to us for reskilling and upskilling is somewhere around about 400 or 500 organizations that we're working directly with through this vast network.
Okay. So normally with a MEC, we would have kind of a list of those employers. Could you name off a few of them that you've been?
Oh, absolutely. For example, General Atomics, General Dynamics, Accenture, Amazon, the list goes on. A lot of the security companies, several local organizations here in San Diego, CCS Global Tech, a lot of the shipyards are a part of our client base, if you will. The numbers are just astronomical.
Perfect. Thank you, Maurice. Final question. I took a look at your website. I wanted to make sure that there was no charges or tuition or program fees attributed to the veterans participating in Reboot. It seems pretty clear to me, but I wanted to give you the chance to kind of reiterate that the veterans are not being charged anything, and that the cost covered for the training outside of what ETP is providing is covered from donors and donations and grants. Is that correct?
You are absolutely correct. The veteran or their family members pay nothing. We bear all the costs. We do everything we can to help them resettle and reintegrate back into their new life.
Thank you, Maurice. Does that also include that you are not taking their GI Bill for attributed to cost for the program?
That's correct. Neither the GI Bill nor tuition assistance.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Okay,
You're
does
welcome.
the other panel have any other questions regarding this proposal? Again, I just have one regarding your performance. I know that you have a lot of explanation regarding the performance in the past about trying to get veterans back into the workforce. They had a different direction. They were going in a different way than you had intended. And then this last one, you got 80%, which is great. I mean, it's not stellar, but it's okay. And it was for 116,000. Now you're coming back in for double that amount. I just want to know why you think that is that a bigger attempt for you to ask for more funding when you could barely eke out what you did last time?
Well, that's a great question. And what we experienced in the first two cycles were the reaching out to the individual and actually the whole process of helping them deal with some of their prior challenges and barriers of reintegration. And in some cases, we were really getting some folks that were really in very challenged lives. And we've learned a lesson that before we even put them into the program, the first phase is to work through the partner network, which is what I mentioned before, which is to really go back in and solve other life issues first, and then get them into training, as opposed to getting them into training, hoping that solves the life problem. We just learned a lesson that it doesn't work that way. And so now that we've got the sequencing correct, now we can actually enhance the numbers and put more veterans to work. Again, California has roughly 1.8 million. That's a lot of people, and it is a desirable place to live. And so we think this is realistic to push this number up. I think we're looking at 95 or 87. We feel like we could probably do maybe twice as much as that, but we want to be conservative and just stick with that.
Well, thanks for that clarification. That makes a whole lot of sense to me, especially, getting the right candidates to begin with is going to be crucial. So I appreciate kind of you're doing your due diligence on the front end of the project. So any other comments regarding this proposal?
None for me.
Before I make a motion, I will open it up to the public if the public has any comment.
There are no hands raised.
Okay, hearing none. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve, Madam Chair.
Do we have a second?
Second, Gretchen.
Gretchen, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, say no. The ayes have it, motion carried. Thank you. Okay, last.
Okay, we're on the last tab here, tab 18. This is a training proposal for American Health Education. It's a priority industry and it's not a repeat contractor. Total ETP funding being requested for $298,800. There is a correction to be made under the training agency certification section of the proposal on page 5, as the BPPE licensure is valid until 9/12/24. So just wanted to make that note for the record. Estimated number of trainees to be trained are 100 under job number 1, which is a new hire veterans receiving medical skills training. ETP funded training will be delivered at American Health's headquarters in Livermore. And as I said, this will be their first ETP contract, and it's all inclusive of new hire veterans under job 1. Here today to answer any of your questions are Yvette Sarandan, Director, and Bill Sachs from National Training Company, Inc., NTC. Thank you.
Thank you. So I just have a question. Are these affiliated with the previous one we just talked about regarding the veterans programs? Are they similar? I mean, do they have kind of the same components, or am I totally separate companies? I understand, but do you source from the same group of people, or?
So we would be recruiting veterans in the area. We would market to try and locate veterans who would benefit from the EMT training course, which we are approved by the Bureau for Private Post-Secondary Education in California. So we do fall under their regulations, and we would seek to place them in jobs in the area.
Okay, and your is more on the medical end of the program, so most of them
Correct.
go into the medical business.
Correct.
Okay. And as Christian mentioned, and I know that there is some reasons why we don't see employers under your proposal, but could you also notify us about some of the employers that you might be placing some of these folks in?
I can. Our sister company, NorCal Ambulance. We also have a number of other ambulance companies in the area. Royal Ambulance, Bay Medic, Falk Ambulance, which is the 911 system in the area. We also have Falcon. And there are a number of retirement communities that hire EMTs as well. Stone Ridge Creek in this area comes and talks to our students as well for recruitment.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Thank you for that.
Mhm.
So is any of the panel, other panel members have any questions regarding this proposal?
I do, Madam Chair, if
Okay,
I
go
may.
ahead, Gretchen.
Yvette, you just mentioned that you had a sister company that's receiving the trainees after you've trained them up. Do they have a separate ETP contract with us too?
No, ma'am.
Thank you. I also noted in your application that you're a public and private training agency. When I took a look at your website, there's clearly evidence of folks having to pay substantial amounts to complete the initial the training for the different programs. Looking at the EMT training fees in the amount of $2,950, it appears in your application though that you're not charging anything of the veterans. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. But what's not clear to me is if a veteran comes to you through what you've proposed for ETP, is that providing them enough hours to fully complete these different training modules in order to receive the certifications, the college credits, et cetera?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I also note on your website that down at the bottom, it says, once you register, you'll be contacted by staff to complete your application. The registration application fee of $250 is a separate fee and non-refundable. The $250 course textbook, Brady Emergency Care 14th edition, includes a lab that must be paid at the time of registration. Are any of these kinds of fees or book charges applicable to the veterans participating in your program?
No.
So they would receive the book for free if participating through the ETP funded program.
Right. For those recruited through this program, they will get their training covered.
Perfect.
Yes.
Are there any other fees or costs attributed to your program for the veterans participating in the ETP funded program that might be in excess of what ETP is funding? And do you take their GI bills for that?
We do not take GI Bill, no.
Okay. And are there any other fees attributed for the completion of the program in excess of that?
We anticipate that these funds will be used for all fees for the recruited vets.
Okay, so nothing will be charged to the vets.
Right.
Let me go back to my panel packet. Sorry, I'm working off of too many different screens today. That concludes my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Gretchen. Any other comments from the panel? Okay, before we make a motion, I'm going to open up the public for any public comment regarding this proposal.
There are no hands raised at this time.
Okay, thank you. So with that, do I have a motion from the panel?
Motion to approve.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second, Gloria.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. The ayes have it, motion carried. Thank you. So that concludes our action on proposals. So with that, I'm going to ask the panel members, is there any requests for agenda items for future panel meetings or subcommittee meetings?
Madam Chair, maybe for subcommittee, we start to focus in on the productive lab.
Yes.
Concerns and component.
Yeah.
Add that to our to-do list.
Yeah, I'd just like to get some more clarification around that. I know when you put an application together, there's a lot more detail that goes into it. We only see kind of a summary of it, but just understanding from what Chris had mentioned that some of it does, you know, we've never really dealt into it that much, other than I think we need to just scrutinize it a little bit more, because I know there could be some abuse regarding that. And I just wanted to get it all cleared up. So as you can see, some of them do have productive lab and some of them don't. I just want to make sure that we're consistent, you know, in how we look at them. And there was also some in the consent calendar. I didn't want to pull them at this point because I knew that we probably had to talk a little further about it. So, all right. Any other items that you want to discuss? All right, so with that, I'm going to open it up for public comment for matters that were not on the agenda. So do we have any public comment out there?
We do. First up is Robert Meyer.
Robert.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, panel. I just wanted to provide a quick update, non-specific update on healthcare and the healthcare initiative. Currently, we're in the program design phase, and that's going to address both the current projected workforce demands within the healthcare industry sector and focus also on the equity, career path adhesion, employment, and industry competitiveness, as well as importantly focus in on good employment outcomes and impacts. While the August Policy Committee is not occurring as initially planned, the healthcare programs team will present a timeline, a program concept, and a high-level engagement plan at our next policy committee when it is scheduled. From there, it'll come to the full panel, hopefully. We're going to advance a panel program designed to make the best use of the goals and flexibilities included within the legislation, and one that's also cognizant of the current footprints of state and federal investments in healthcare and job creation as part of the recovery efforts from the pandemic. This is going to ensure that our program's investments are unique and will likely result in a viable ETP contract with the maximum impact possible for the workers supported. I'd like to be very intentional regarding our engagement. The initial project projections of demand and engagement, we're targeting $90 million in general funds. We have $25 million to spend in this program. So we're going to be seeking the most competitive potential opportunities with these funds. Again, the most competitive potential opportunities are going to be what are advanced and supported into the contracting phase. The initial engagement and messaging to interested stakeholders will begin and will continue. In the interim, if any of our stakeholders or potential contractors have a project in mind and would like to be included in our engagement and outreach, please connect to our team, the Economic Development Unit. Contact information is on the website. If you have any I'd like to also let you know that we have some upcoming events that are going to talk about healthcare briefly, both our core program and general funds, as we begin to get more specificity. The upcoming California Workforce Meeting of the Minds Conference is going to be just after Labor Day in Monterey. We're going to be covering healthcare equity and some new programs that we've funded. Mario Maslich is going to lead and moderate the presentation, but our NorCal team, Renee and Elise, will be there. Again, the focus is going to be really on the equity pieces. Next is the Homeboy Global Support, Homeboy Global Network Summit in Los Angeles next week. We're proud to sponsor it. This is really focused in on the CBOs and service providers for equity pieces, populations or workers, people of color, and the traditionally underserved populations and communities. We're really happy to be part of that. And then lastly, I'd like to give a shout out to Renee Pierce, our senior staff, who forged a relationship with the California Association for Rural Healthcare Clinics. And through that organization presented at a statewide conference this last week. And has forged a follow-up opportunity for a membership-focused webinar on the program once we have specificity. This really talks to tribal, rural health, as well as both the nonprofit sectors and potentially municipal areas. We've already received inquiries. The presentation was yesterday afternoon or yesterday morning, and we've already received inquiries through the website on potential programs that might be of a target on this. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Renee on that. So that's my comment. Thanks.
Yeah, thank
Good
you,
question.
Robert. Yeah, I just have a comment, Robert, regarding this healthcare proposal. I'm hoping that you kind of look at it closer. I know it's still on the development phase, but you know, we do have a lot of healthcare hospitals and whatever come through on a regular core projects. And, you know, I hopefully that we get some new projects in versus running projects concurrently, because I know we ran projects concurrently before with special funding streams and it got a little sticky. So anyway, please look at that carefully when you're putting the development of the project together.
Yeah, I think in the initial focus, we're looking at the employer sectors that are not served by our core program funds. We do
Okay,
have
perfect.
a lot of healthcare interest in our core program, and those will be developed consistent with our standard program practices. So you won't see current enrollment or lack of performance in any of those projects. What we will see in this new area are going to be some areas to really address the equity pieces, and it'll be somewhat different than our standard program model. But again, it'll be focused on the nonprofit sectors and those elements that we don't currently fund.
Okay.
All
Very
right.
good. Thanks, Robert. Does the
course.
panel have any questions for Robert regarding that? All right. Any other hands raised, Elena?
Yes, next up is Philip Herrera. Go ahead.
Good
Phil?
afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Phil Herrera, Herrera and Company from the great city of Stockton. And just wanted to make a comment about Productive Lab. I've been working this issue for the panel for a very long time. And I wanted to point out to the panel that there is a deep review of Productive Lab during the application process. There is a Productive Lab workbook that we fill out. And there's a lot of great questions that actually came out from the panel members today about what it is and what it isn't. What I recommend is that in the next policy committee meeting, if you're interested, you can reach out to the stakeholder committee and ask for recommendations. I'd love to give mine on how we could tweak the actual 130 to make it very clear what the Productive Lab is. As you can see from today, not all Productive Lab training plans with employers are created the same. My companies, which are life sciences and highly regulated, they have a very fleshed out system with certifications for each Productive Lab course that they can produce to a monitor. So that's very different than maybe a machine shop could attain. But there is this middle ground that I believe that the panel can get to. So I'm looking forward to the next policy committee meeting, and maybe we can put that on the agenda. Thank you. Great job today, panel members. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, Phil. Yeah, I know that productive life could be very different, but you know, if people that are doing the training don't even understand what productive lab is, that's a problem. So yeah, I can understand the application is a lot more granular than what we see. So it's more detailed, and you know, every company is not the same, and that's trying to what I try to ferret out on some of my comments. So, all right, any other hands raised?
Yes, we have Dave Teasdale. Go ahead.
Thank you, and I'll be brief. I just want to cycle back to the revisions for moving training between job numbers and request that we establish some guidelines. Us multi-employer contractors frequently have a change in demand, and when that's a change that is positive to the goals of the panel, we need a streamlined way. I have increased demand in our job creation, increased demand in our new hire. I wouldn't think that that's something we would want to throw up additional administrative roadblocks to moving funds from, say, standard or set into those. So I just want to suggest that we can create some guidelines to streamline those. Sometimes those changes are positive changes that we're looking to encourage. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
All right, and next we have Diana. Go ahead.
Good morning. I'd like to provide the panel and the public with an update on fiscal year 21-22 general funds, which we know is the $50 million for expansion and the $15 million for the California Community College Fund. Specifically, I'd like to update with regards to the condition for each of these funds was to, of course, provide a interim and final report to the Legislative Budget Committee as to the use and outcomes resulting from the funds awarded. The interim report is due to the Budget Committee this November 2022. We are currently wrapping up the data collection phase for the interim first report. Therefore, at this time, I wanted to pause and take the opportunity with this update to thank all the California Community College Fund and Expansion Fund contractors, their staff, and subcontractors, as well as internal ETP staff for their excellent teamwork efforts to collect and report all of the data that they have done so far. I'd like to especially thank Elizabeth Testa for her successful facilitating of the high road employer definition with the panel, as well as the regional office, planning and research, data analytics, and CaliForce team members. And of course, acknowledge Jennifer Lima as the project manager over this entire mandate. The successful collaboration and teamwork efforts has resulted in close to 100% contractor response. This includes information on hundreds of participating employers currently participating. Thank you.
Thanks, Diana. Any questions for Diana regarding this project with the community colleges? All right. Any other hands raised, Alana?
Nope, no other hands raised at this time.
Okay, very good. So our next panel meeting will be a virtual meeting in August. So I guess we'll see everyone there. So with that, I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Hi.